the first ever edition of New Zealand Water Polo's Inside the Game. Mark Watson with you. Today on the program, we're going to catch up with the two key administrators in the sport, your CEO, Chris Wilson, your high performance manager, Kurt Goldsworthy. So without further ado, let's welcome these two fine gentlemen in. Evening to you, Chris. Evening to you, Kurt. Welcome.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Chris, just how difficult has the last 5 weeks been with COVID-19, and what has that meant for you in your capacity and your role as CEO of the sport?
Yes, thanks, Mark. COVID-19's had quite a huge impact on water polo and obviously on all sport and recreation across the country. At the time of the announcement, we were right in our secondary school season. We're heading towards the end of term one, the summer tournament week. And also, we were 2 rounds into our National League. As soon as the announcement was made, obviously we made to suspend all play. From there, we have put various plans in place, but essentially it's occurred right mid-season, particularly in the middle of our National League. And also now, as things have evolved, clearly we've got to a position where a number of our other events, activities, and we're talking predominantly community water polo here for young people, flipper ball, through secondary schools, through age group competitions. This is the time of year when they're competing. So along with our National League, which is our flagship event, these are the events that just simply haven't been able to take place, and for all the right reasons. So it certainly has caused some uncertainty and disrupted the programming.
No, well, I don't envy you, Chris, at all. What about for you, Kurt? How difficult has it been for you in your role?
Extremely challenging. We had a team travelling to, as you're aware, to the Olympic Games qualifying tournament in Trieste. They were scheduled to leave on March the 2nd, and all this started to escalate in Italy, in northern Italy, the week before. We were in contact with FINA daily, encouraging a decision. At that time, Travel Safe NZ still had can travel, no reason not to. So it looked like we were travelling. We certainly weren't eager to travel, and pretty much pushed FINA pretty hard to advise us on whether the event would go ahead or be postponed. And pretty much in the 11th hour, they came through and said, no, it's certainly postponed. It looks like that event now will be postponed until January next year. Now that the Olympics have changed, and with that, of course, pools are shut. We can't train, or we can't train as we normally would. We can't select our athletes for various other national groups. We've got the FINA World Youth Championships coming up for the men in Turkey in August. They're currently on hold, is as much as I can say. We haven't got much information from FINA in regard to that. And the Youth Women's World Championships, which is under 18s, is in Israel. That was scheduled for September. That looks like it's going to go ahead and be pushed back, postponed to November. And of course, with in a user-pay sport, with travel coming back, 2 weeks of self-isolation over here, we've got lots of issues travelling. And we may have more issues travelling to the destination because we don't know what their self-isolation rules are either. So we're all up in the air a little bit, but we do have our athletes training. We've been running a lot of social media stuff. National Women's Coach has put together some programs for basically, and we've shared it with the whole of the water polo community, currently what the women are doing. There's a new set coming out over the next 4 weeks as well. Our men have started doing some other social media stuff to keep our water polo community up to speed and understand that everybody's in this together.
Well, Chris, we're going to move from level 4 to level 3 and maybe in a couple of weeks to a level 2. So what does that mean for the sport? What does that mean for the athletes? Do we really know?
Yeah, look, we've been in, as part of a wider group of aquatic users, actually, including swimming, diving, synchronized artistic swimming. We've been part of an advocacy group, I suppose, looking to work together. We've also taken some guidance from Sport New Zealand, who advised the Minister and accordingly MB, who then forward the information to the Ministry of Health to make these decisions. I think it'll be clear the Ministry of Health are the decision makers as a government department. Sport New Zealand are an advisor to them. But we've taken some guidelines from those bodies. And I suppose the big issue for us at the moment is two-part, really. Clearly, we have the health and safety and well-being of all our participants in mind, and certainly want us to play our part in minimising the risk to people. But secondly, Mark, the other issue is, of course, our aquatic centres and our facilities are closed. And they'll be closed under level 3 as they from next week as well. And it will be at least level 2 before we can still have activity water polo will be able to partake in. We understand that the government and minister will be briefing was likely to look like space for level 2 approximately in about 10 days, around about the 11th of May. We're looking to get a briefing on what we can and can't do and what were permissible at level 2. But in that meantime, I think New Zealand Water Polo, we haven't been sitting on our hands. We're certainly looking at what we can do. We provided some guidelines to our water polo community, that clubs and centre schools and our facility operators for what can occur at the various stages. And very much looking for that to be further, if you like, when future government announcements are made as to exactly what we can do. But I mean, actually, Mark, like most coasts, this isn't an us for everybody else. We're looking for some direction and some idea about what is permissible, but at the same time, we've got a plan B in place as soon as activity can be reactivated.
Yeah, they certainly want to play. They're chomping at the bit. But with the situation being led by the Ministry of Health in particular and the government, we will follow the line. As I said, we were towing the line even in late February. And even at that point, COVID-19 in New Zealand was not here. So we'll certainly follow their guidelines at every level. And we just have to be adaptable in the way that we can advance our athletes.
Yeah, extremely challenging, Mark, as it has been for a lot of not-for-profit and sports organisations. I think on a positive side, New Zealand Water Polo has generated some surpluses over the last 2 years, which have given us some reserves to work through this. But look, quite simply, we don't have the reserves to be able to sustain this for an extended period. At the moment, the business of New Zealand Water Polo is a complex. It's delivering events, it's delivering participation programs, it's high performance programs as we've talked about, and it's also managing facilities where we have responsibility for managing and for pool space and accessibility to facilities in the Greater Auckland area. Now they've been compromised. There's a revenue area that has completely dried up. So, in general terms, whilst New Zealand Water Polo can, work through over the next 2 to 3 months, the critical period for us is going to be what will be accessible and available to us as a sport under level 2, and ensuring that the decisions we make are fiscally responsible once we're aware of what actually we can deliver. But certainly, it's a very trying time, and whilst we do have the resources, due to some good work in previous years, they certainly won't be lasting forever.
Kurt, what systems have you put in place to monitor the athletes through this so that when we do come through the other side, hopefully they're close to peak condition, other than the fact they actually haven't been in the pool?
So we've just set up, and we were working on this prior to this, we've just set up a rate of perceived exertion form for them. We want them to pretty much advise us how long they're working and at what effort per day. We want to keep it really simple so that they fill it out and they get it back to us. And then 3 times a week, they've got a wellness monitoring system that all goes back to the coaches. And so we can assess their work rate versus how they're feeling, making sure that they're not pushing themselves too hard, or we're encouraging them to push themselves a little bit harder.
Chris, is there any potential financial opportunities for the organisation once we come through this? I would imagine that some of the bigger businesses who maybe used to spend a lot of money on mainstream advertising will be looking to cut back. I mean, you've got a large community in water polo, and do you see some positive coming out of this?
I think, Mark, this COVID-19 it will create an opportunity for us once we work through the next phase. essentially things have got to change. We can't deliver the same model and have the same method and have the same way and procedures of doing things. It's an opportunity for us to look closely at what our tournament structures are, what our engagement with our members is, both at club and centre level, look at our engagement with schools and what type of activities we're offering. I think we're very lucky. We've got some good commercial partners, and look, just to mention a few, our supply partners, Delphina Sport, Cap 7, 2XU, our apparel sponsor, Digital Masters, our broadcasting partner, and even down to AT, who support a big biannual event, which we've had to shift to 2021. These companies and these organisations have stuck with us in this period, and we're very, very grateful for that. But I think for us, there's around 30,000 people playing water polo in New Zealand, much larger than a lot of people estimate, particularly for young people. The sport at school level is growing. The sport at football, the brand we use for primary school and year 7 and 8 children is certainly growing. So our value proposition and what we can offer for young people in terms of aquatic non-aquatic experience and familiarity, and then moving into fundamental skills and basic sports skills, there's a lot there we can offer. And I think you're right that there's definitely an opportunity to for us to really think about how we can create that value proposition for potential partners to join us. So look, I'm optimistic that once we work through the detail and we can get ourselves back into some safe and controlled activity, make sure that we are meeting the standards that are set by the government, that the sport can come out of this as strong as it possibly can. And I think there's definitely some opportunities there for building new partnerships.
And what about for you, Kurt? I would imagine that this has given the athletes an opportunity to establish some new habits, maybe areas that once they've been perhaps weak in, they've now learned to upskill themselves. It's become habit. A lot of that supplementary work off the water, away from the water.
Oh, definitely. It's a great opportunity for our athletes at the moment to do significant strength and conditioning, depending on what they've got at home. As we know, Kiwis are quite number 8 wire type people. I've done that with my kids. My kids are into doing some stuff. With the internet being as it is, and the opportunities to see strength and conditioning from other areas has been adopted by many. And it's also, an opportunity to make sure that if you came into this with an injury, it's a good time to rest, it's a good time to advance, and then it's a good time to correct that injury and strengthen that underneath without any real significant heavy workload. So we will get some good trainings from our athletes and some new habits, without a doubt.
Okay, Chris, just finally, just a quick message for the water polo community out there.
Look, I think for the water polo community, stay patient, stay strong, think about the good times that you have playing water polo. They're not far away.
And Kurt, for those high-performing athletes or those that are aspiring to get to that level, what's your message?
Lots of world championships coming up at under 18s, under 20s, and even seniors next year. So we just need them to keep on trucking, stay well, stay healthy, both mentally and physically.
Well, it's been a fascinating time, hasn't it? A once in a lifetime. Let's just put it that way. Hopefully some good times to come. Special thanks to Chris, special thanks to Kurt as well. We hope you've enjoyed the first ever edition of Inside the Game. Next week on the program, we are going to catch up with Matt Morris, one of New Zealand's leading water polo players, but he's also on a scholarship in the States. How did he get that scholarship? And what is life like in California on campus? All that and more. Look forward to having you company.